All right, the Clippers are on a 9-game winning streak. Is Joel Embiid the MVP frontrunner? And are the Cavaliers on the verge of becoming sellers at the NBA's trade deadline? It's the Thursday episode of Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the daily podcast covering everything you want to know about the association. I'm normally on Wednesdays, but we switched with Pat the Designer and Nick Angstad last night as the Pelicans were taking on the Memphis Grizzlies. So I'm here on Thursday with Ku Khahil of Locked On Pistons. Ku, thanks for being here with me, buddy.
Appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to it.
He's a rookie here on Locked On NBA, so hopefully the refs give him a good whistle here. Hopefully this doesn't start a losing streak as he's covering the Pistons here for Locked On NBA.
Don't gotta worry about starting anything. It's already there.
It's just deep in it there. And of course, thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering everything you want to know about the association. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. Become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday. So let's start off with what I think is one of the bigger stories in the league right now, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers on a 9-game winning streak, finally figuring some things out in a pretty big way after the James Harden trade. All right, Ku, what you got for me here when it comes to the Clippers? You buying them? We're not doing buy or sell, but they look real, don't they? They look legit at this point, I think.
No, yeah, I think they look pretty legit. I've been able to catch some of their games, a little bit more of their games as of late, because obviously the Pistons are trash, so I try to find good games to watch. So I've been watching some good basketball, and the Clippers are definitely one of them. I think James Harden is looking as, I would say, as springy as he's looked in quite a while. He's looked really good, but I do think I think James Harden obviously is a big reason for what's going on, how well they've been playing. But I think Kawhi looking like Kawhi is probably like the biggest reason for what's going on over the last 11 games, 29.3 points. He's shooting 60% from the field, 56 from deep, 92% from the free throw line, 6.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.3 steals. I know earlier in the season there was some talk about, is Kawhi, are we seeing Kawhi maybe, is he resting during the season? Is he trying to go slow? Is he, is the injuries finally caught up to him? But I think he's kind of quieting all of that as of late, especially this past game they just played tonight that we're recording. I think Kawhi being back to what we expect of him, especially like the playoff Kawhi type, I think that's the biggest reason. But for sure, I think the Clippers are figuring it out after a rough start. And it's fun to see Kawhi and James Harden both look pretty good in their older years.
Yeah, look, I think you nailed it, right? Like the Harden addition is fine for them. It works. That's great. But the reason they're winning games is Kawhi Leonard is reminding everyone that he's one of the best players in the league. He's played every game this season for them, right? Like that was going to be the big thing for the Los Angeles Clippers was, are they going to just load manage, it kind of tanks their season. Then they get into the playoffs and look like nobody has ever seen each other before it ever played together. But you've gotten just a fully healthy season from Kawhi Leonard. He was great in this one. He, I think, created 9 or 11 straight points in the fourth quarter, really took over this game for the Clippers, right? They've been healthy with Paul George too. This was his second game missed this season for the team. Like that is a very good thing so far for him, that they're kind of getting that consistency with everything. And then some of the role players are stepping up for him, and they've been really good since this. You don't go on a 9-game winning streak by accident here. Where do you rank them in the Western Conference?
I think so I was actually listening to JJ Redick's podcast with Nikias and Steve Jones the other day, and they were talking about the Clippers, and they were ranking where, they thought they had the Clippers. And after listening to them talk about it, I think I'd have them around like in between the first and second tier of the West. I don't know if I feel all the way saying that they're the top tier in the West. I would say I have the Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves are really impressive this year. So I'd have the Timberwolves number 1. I'd still have the Nuggets number 2, or actually the Nuggets probably number 1, then the Timberwolves number 2. And I think after that, you can start to make arguments for others. But I think the Timberwolves have kind of separated themselves a little bit. I think the Nuggets, obviously, I don't think anyone's really, I think everyone expects the Nuggets to basically be the best team in the West when it really matters. So I have those two in the top tier. But I think the Clippers, if they continue to play this way, they can find themselves in that type of tier as well.
Yeah, I think they can kind of creep up there. I wouldn't put them as one of the favorites, I think, coming out of the West, though. If there are injuries, I think that kind of opens the door wide open for them. Also, do you trust this team in the playoffs yet till you've seen it more, right? Am I going to trust Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the playoffs together on this team till, they actually do it and don't kind of get laughably bounced, right? Does that mean make a finals with this group? There were big concerns earlier on after this trade too of, did this make them worse? Did they give up, role players, even though they didn't really, and were they going to find people slotting into the right roles? Does that change as we get later in the season? There's still some questions, I think, that I want to see answered about them, but overall, and also beating up on, this Dallas team, right, that doesn't have Derek Lively, who's out, right, doesn't have Kyrie Irving playing either, I think says something too. But how are you feeling about Luka, though, trying to carry these Mavs now?
I mean, Luka is amazing as usual, man. He's just so much fun to watch. Some of the passes I see him make anytime I watch Dallas Mavericks game, man, he just does they're just insane, man. It's next level type of things. So I love watching Luka. I really love the pairing between him and their rookie big man. I think that was a great pick by them.
Yeah.
And I think Luka and Kyrie are looking better together than I initially thought that they would look together as well. So I think it's looking pretty good for them. I think they're better this year than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Also the Dante Exum kind of resurgence, everything kind of just with his career being resurrected, 16 points in this game. Luka with the triple-double of 28 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. They have some more depth there than I thought they were going to end up having, and I think that's kind of impressed me a little bit. Going back to the Clippers, you see any move they need to make towards the trade deadline, or just kind of keep going as is and try and keep up with what they have?
I don't see a trade as of now. I mean, obviously, something could always open up, and the Clippers have proven to be super aggressive. So if anything is to be available, I'm sure they'll go after it. I think one of the other main moves I think they've made, and I think it's a move they can continue to, if they continue to do this, it'll be just as good as pulling off a trade. Over that same stretch that Kawhi has looked this great, and obviously the Clippers overall have looked that great, Russell Westbrook's not even averaging 20 minutes a game. He's averaging 18 minutes a game. He's not playing a lot at all. And I think one of my biggest concerns when they acquired James Harden was, I think the saying there's only one ball on the court is oftentimes wrong. But in this case, I thought, okay, it actually made sense. And I know I saw a few people saying, you don't want anyone to get hurt, obviously. But it was people were saying, this trade almost makes more sense if you're betting on one of them getting hurt, and then you have to have, James Harden kind of helps you when one of them gets hurt. But what they've done instead is, Russ is coming off the bench, and he's not he's playing starter minutes either. He's not playing very many minutes off the bench for them. So I think limiting his minutes off the bench is helping them a ton. I think that's a role that they found for him. And from all accounts, it doesn't sound like he's too mad about it. It doesn't sound like he sounds like he's bought into everything. So I think that's if they continue to do that and everyone buys into their roles, and obviously Kawhi continues to be Kawhi and not get hurt, hopefully, I think they'll be fine, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't see them needing to make big moves. Just kind of keep doing what you're doing and just trying to get incrementally better could make them in that top of that second tier in the Western Conference potentially. So coming up next, let's talk about Joel Embiid. Is he the MVP frontrunner? We're going to pay real or fake. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. And right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about eBay Motors, because eBay Motors is partnering with us here to bring you the eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. We got fantasy basketball host Josh Lloyd bringing you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. So whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with the players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. Again, it's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. You got Brandon Podziemski. Podziemski has looked comfortable as a starter for the Warriors. He's widely available in fantasy leagues. He contributes all across the board. You also have Tari Eason coming off the bench, but it doesn't really matter as Ime Udoka has found minutes for him. He's a strong fantasy value per minute option who becomes useful to everybody as these minutes tick up. So Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is all about each player being a perfect fit. Same for your vehicle. I work on all my cars. I'm restoring a 1976 Corvette right now. It needs a lot of parts. There's no worse feeling than getting a part, taking off a part, putting on the new one. Now your hood doesn't close. I don't need to worry about that with eBay Motors. That's actually happened to me, because with over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Whether you want to upgrade your brakes, add LED headlights, put a new roof rack on, upgrade your bumper, whatever it is, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, my favorite part of this, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. And at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your vehicle running over at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, breaking down everything you want to know about the association. For your second listen, go check out what we've launched here with Locked On. Launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, normally on Wednesdays, we play Real or Fake. We're playing Real or Fake on Thursdays because we switch it up here this week. So let's play it, Ku. You've never played this before. It's pretty simple here. After his dominant performance in the game over a very good defense, and I'm sure we'll get into that in this one, where did the exact number just go? I just lost it. Joel Embiid, 51 points. Real or Fake, Ku? Joel Embiid is the MVP favorite right now.
I mean, I think he has to be, right? I mean, I don't really know who else he would put above him. The 76ers have 19 wins. They're third in the Eastern Conference. They're only a game behind the Bucks and the Celtics. Joel Embiid is currently leading the league in scoring right now. He is remaining extremely efficient. The overall offense of the Philadelphia 76ers is running very smoothly. And this is without James Harden, who is obviously a great player. They moved on from him, and I'm sure a lot of people thought that maybe they would take a step back, but they haven't lost a beat at all. And it's a lot to do with Joel Embiid, and he talked about it a little bit, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, about how you can't win playing ISO basketball, and he's really buying into. Now, obviously, Joel is going to get his shots and his usage still, but he's really buying into playing, some team basketball. He's really buying into playing winning basketball for the Philadelphia 76ers, which also presents the opportunity for him to dominate doing what he always does. I think that combining just what he's doing in his own, just looking at his own stats versus how successful the 76ers have been amid what we saw happen all offseason with the drama with James Harden, I think that adds to the story argument of the MVP. And then obviously I think he has the stats for it too. So yeah, I think he's the MVP right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is real. I don't know if he'll end up winning it the season. I think this is a little bit closer than you do. I think there's like 5 guys you could make an argument for, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. But after 51 points against one of the best defenses in the league, I think that kind of really solidifies him in that top spot. Right over the past, and this isn't counting his 51-point game that he just had. Over the past 12 games, he's averaging 36.8 points per game, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 12 rebounds. He's shooting 37% from 3, 56% from the field. Like he's just ridiculous. He's also anchoring a very good defense too. The numbers kind of speak for himself. The argument against him has been that he's been really beating up like bad teams, bad defenses, and hasn't been doing it against some of these top units out there that some of the other guys like Giannis, Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think is in the running. Luka Doncic would be in the running too. Those are my 5 guys, have been doing. But then when you go out and drop 51 on the Minnesota Timberwolves, who've been, as you were talking about them in the last segment, right? Like they've been good. They have the best defense in the league and the best interior defense in the league, particularly too, with Rudy Gobert anchoring that. For him to come in and then straight up own that team like he did, even with some kind of touchy foul calls going his way in that first quarter, I think that kind of puts that narrative to bed. The one thing you almost could point to that holds him back right now.
Yeah, thinking about the MVP race at this point of the season, I feel like the last 3 years has been the same guys.
Has been.
Like Giannis, Jokic, Embiid. Giannis, Jokic, Embiid. I feel like it's been those guys battling each other for like 4 or 5 years now, like constantly over and over. I mean, like you said, Embiid just had 51, but Giannis has had 64 the other night. And Jokic obviously is Jokic. And the other guy that you mentioned, I'm happy you brought him up. SGA, I think he's been absolutely fantastic. The OKC Thunder. are a top 5 seed right now in the Western Conference. They're actually second in the Western Conference right now. I don't think, I think a lot of people were maybe higher on the Thunder coming into this year, but I don't think anyone thought they would be like the second seed at this point. It has a lot to do with how SGA is playing. I think Embiid's the MVP right now. Along, obviously the 2 other guys I just mentioned that are always right there with him fighting for it. But I do think there are some sneaky names this early into the year.
Oh, who you got?
So I'm going to say Embiid ends up with it still.
Okay.
But there's two names I want to throw out there that I don't think are going to win it, but I think deserve just to get some love. One is SGA, so I'm happy you brought him up. That was the first one. And then the second one, my question, I guess it's kind of a question too. How long do the Minnesota Timberwolves need to be the first in the West before one of them start to get like, whether it's Cat or Anthony Edwards starts to get like some talk about this?
That's a great question, actually. The Timberwolves are kind of interesting, I think, right? Like, they're good. I've watched them pretty closely this year. Like, that team's legit. That defense is very good. There's some limitations to that defense. Dominant big man Zion lit him up, right? We just saw Embiid light him up. There's limitations to it, but they're a very good defense. And then you're anchored by Anthony Edwards, who I think is a bona fide stud at this point, right? Like, he's a guy that can go out and give you 50 on any given night, and you wouldn't blink an eye that he did that sort of thing. I think because they have 3 guys that are kind of carrying them in like various ways, they're taking away from one another a little bit, right? Like, I would assume it would be Anthony Edwards who would be getting the MVP buzz this season. He's averaging almost 25 points per game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, shooting 38% from 3 on good volume there too. Kind of leading their team, I think. It feels like Towns has kind of taken a slight step back and role with the emergence of Anthony Edwards, so I kind of take him out of the running there. But I wonder if just Towns still being there kind of like takes away a little bit from him. But look, Anthony Edwards also has kind of like the narrative, right? He led Team USA. He was the best player on that team. Coming into this season, we expected like a leap from him, but maybe we weren't expecting it to be like as good, or is he not living up to that hype? Maybe he's kind of a victim of his own success. But do you think it's Anthony Edwards over Towns?
I do think it's Anthony Edwards over Towns right now, but I want to give love to Karl Anthony Towns during this too, because I mean he's averaging 22. He's shooting over 50% from the field, almost 43% from the beyond the arc.
I've heard he's the best shooting big man in NBA history, according to himself.
I mean, he's shooting like one right now. So I don't think these guys are I don't think they're going to win MVP. But I just wonder how long, because it is early in the season still. We're like a quarter through the way through the season. I just wonder how long do they need to remain as I think mostly right now with them as the first seed, people are still looking at them like, oh, well, fun story. But I don't feel like a lot of people are looking at them as like, oh, God, this is like a championship contender right now. I think most people are looking at them as like a good story right now.
Well, that's because they just haven't done it, right? They haven't won a playoff series in 20 years. So, I think they're legit and very good. Would I go to, any FanDuel or any place and bet on them? Absolutely not to win the championship, because I don't trust them in the postseason. And I wonder if that's going to hold people voting back for Anthony Edwards. Does that hurt some of the narrative of it's just got to be a prove it year, right? Jokic kind of needed to win to carry the Nuggets to the finals, right? You could argue he should have won MVP. Very easily could have argued he should have won MVP over Embiid last year, but it seemed like voters didn't want to give him a 3rd straight MVP till he won a finals or took a team to the finals, right? Does this Timberwolves team need to win a playoff series, let's say, for a guy like Anthony Edwards next season to finally be allowed to be in that conversation? Or is he going to be the token 5th place guy that you put on there just because he had a good year, but because I don't trust this team, I'm not going to put him in my top 4, something like that?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think either one of them are going to be, top contenders for the MVP. I just think, like I said, I think if we're in February and Minnesota Timberwolves are still number 1 in the Western Conference, I think Anthony Edwards has to get some kind of buzz at that point. If we're at that point, they're number 1 in the West, which, by the way, the West, every single time it sounds like, or at least it feels like, the East is catching up to the West. The West then comes up back and just, gets even tougher. So if in February, somewhere around there, they're still number 1, I think Anthony Edwards has to get some kind of noise.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. You've got to start giving them kind of credit for, the winning and the things that they're doing there. So how would you rank those top 5 guys? Or your top? So are you leaving Luka out of the conversation too?
I'd have Luka in there right now. I'd probably go Embiid. I'd go Embiid, Giannis, Jokic, SGA, Luka.
Okay, I think that's fair. That's probably about mine. It probably goes Embiid, Giannis, Jokic. Yeah, SGA. I would do the same top 5. Like, that's what I like. I think that sounds right. But I don't think Anthony Edwards is necessarily like far behind. Actually, I think he's a little bit out of that top 5, but he should start getting some buzz. You're right on that. All right, coming up next, Cleveland Cavaliers. Is it time for them to sell off their pieces given the injuries they've had and maybe Donovan Mitchell leaving? That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA. Right now, though, I'm here to tell you about BetterHelp, and this podcast is brought to you by and sponsored by BetterHelp. Look, it's the holidays, so whether or not your family gives gifts during the holidays, you get to define how you give to yourself, and the holidays are a great time to do that. So whether it's by starting therapy, going easier on yourself during the tough moments, or treating yourself to a day of complete rest, remember to give yourself some love this holiday season. I actually use BetterHelp. I really like it. You know, therapy is not just for people who've experienced major trauma. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, basically just empowering you to be the best version of yourself. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. My favorite part of this is it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. I don't have time to go drive to a doctor's office, sit in a waiting room, go have the appointment, and then drive back home. Here I can just be working, hop on my appointment, go back to what I was doing. It's so easy, and I'm there always for the appointment. So in the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. And thank you for making it Locked On NBA your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about the association. I'm going to spare Ku and not ask him about the Detroit Pistons because I'm sure you want to talk about anything other than them right now, dude.
I do. Anything but them, I'm good.
That's why we got you on Locked On NBA here. Give you a break.
Just got to take a break. It's fun to talk about like good basketball or even mediocre basketball compared to the Pistons is good basketball. So
when you've been down so long, everything looks like up, basically, I believe is the saying when it comes to all of that here. Well, we appreciate you being on here. So let's get into the Cleveland Cavaliers, who did beat the Utah Jazz, which makes this maybe a little bit more of an interesting conversation. Per Jake Fisher of Yahoo, you know, a lot of teams are calling about their pieces. They have injuries to Darius Garland with a broken jaw. Evan Mobley just had surgery. You know, there have been a lot of rumors that Donovan Mitchell is going to bolt out of Cleveland the first chance they get. He did not end up playing in this game, I don't think. And they still went out and beat the Utah Jazz. When you look at this team, being a guy who covers the Eastern Conference, you know, what do you think the Cavaliers should be doing right now?
So I think they're in an interesting position because I'll take you back to like when they traded for Donovan Mitchell initially. Like obviously my first reaction was, oh great, another Central Division team just went and made a move and the Pistons still suck. That was the first initial reaction. But then the second reaction was that's a pretty damn good team. That Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, like that's a pretty damn formidable unit. And then obviously they had a disappointment in the playoffs. I think what really makes it interesting, obviously, is the injuries to Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. Like them being out. I mean, Mobley, I think they said he's out 6 to 8 weeks. Garland's more 4 to 6. So, and that's just more, you know, I say this all the time to my listeners. That's just when they get reevaluated. That doesn't mean they're coming back at that time. That just means that's when they get checked on again. So who knows how long they'll be out. I think, you know, them winning 3 straight games right now kind of helps this whole noise, and it kind of helps, you know, if they wanted to just, you know, hold pat and just wait till they got back, that kind of helps the narrative right now because they, you know, they're on a winning streak. But if those guys are going to be out for a while and there's noise about Donovan Mitchell, like not wanting to be there or wanting to get out, how good are you going to be without Garland and Mobley at this point? And is it worth playing Mitchell and, you know, trying to hang on to what, like a 9th seed, 10th seed or somewhere around there while these guys are out? Or should you just go ahead and say this season, you know, it is what it is. This was, you know, bad luck this year. Mobley and Garland will be back next year. They'll be back at the end of the year. And during this time, we'll go get assets for Donovan Mitchell and recoup in the offseason, be ready to go with a different version. Not rebuilding, they're just retooling with a different version of this team. I think their main guys, even with Donovan Mitchell on the team, is still their youngest guys in Garland and Mobley. That's their future. Because I do think Mitchell, even if they don't trade him, I think he is looking to get out once his contract's gone. So I think this kind of opens up a pathway for them to trade Mitchell and kind of go down the route of, he didn't, it's not that he didn't want to be here. It's not that he hated it here. It's not like that we didn't want him here. We're kind of, we're with injuries and everything, we were kind of forced into this pathway. We just, took it this way.
Look, I think you got the right read on it. You can see the argument for them not moving any of these guys and to continue to go forward because they're a good team, right? I don't think they're going to come out of the East anytime soon with this exact roster, but they're a good team that could, in theory, make some noise, assuming they don't run into like a terrible matchup in the first round of the playoffs. But when you look at their ceiling, right, like compared to some of these teams in the Eastern Conference here, they're not going to be better than Boston. They're not going to be better than Milwaukee. They're not going to be better than Philly. Their ceiling to me is like 4th seed. Is that what you want your ceiling to be in the East, right? Like, I wonder if that isn't really good enough. And it was funny. I went on the Locked On Cavaliers show earlier on in the offseason as they were talking about Evan Mobley and kind of comparing him to Anthony Davis, who I covered for his first couple of years here in New Orleans. And when I was talking to them about it, they said something that surprised me, which was they see like Evan Mobley as like the number one player on this team. And I was like, over Donovan Mitchell. And they said, yeah, even if Donovan Mitchell's there, we think Evan Mobley's ceiling is so high. If that's who you think is going to lead you, this is the year to kind of sell off the other pieces that may or may not be there in the future in Donovan Mitchell, recoup a lot of those assets, and then start building around them, right? If your core is going to be Darius Garland and it's going to be Evan Mobley, get other young players that are a little bit more on their timeline that can complement them perfectly, I think. And that's what makes it so interesting, right? Like, do you want to move on from a guy like Jared Allen and just free up all of the front court space for Evan Mobley and try and put more shooters around him and different things? And I think a good argument could be made for that. If this team looked like they could fight for the 1 or the 2 seed in the East when they were fully healthy, I don't think you blow this up and you risk it in a small market like that when you have a guy like Donovan Mitchell. But that's not what I see their ceiling being. So at that point, I think, yeah, maybe you need to start like moving on from some of these or start quietly having discussions with other teams around the league.
Yeah, I don't have a problem if they want. The thing is that I think that having those 2 guards has really helped Mobley. And it really, having 2 dynamic scoring guards that can get downhill, especially Garland, who's developed into a really damn good basketball player, really great passer, I think. Having those 2 guys get downhill and being able to provide scoring gravity for him as well, like I think those 2 guys really have helped Mobley develop over the last few years. So I understand if the Cavs don't really want to move off of that because they think maybe that will hurt Mobley. Especially, I think those 2 guys are the ones that make the whole double big thing work. If they're going to run that 2 double big thing, having 2 guys who can hit pull up threes and pull up jump shots and provide that kind of spacing, I think that is really what the key that allows them to run those type of lineups. But yeah, I if I was them, I would side on the, these guys are out for a while. If they were healthy, I wouldn't do it. If they were healthy, I want to see how far they go. I think Max Strus has been really good for them. I think that was a really good signing. So healthy, I'm sure like people outside would be like, their ceilings, 4th seed, they're not going to beat these guys. But I'm sure within they probably feel like, with this addition, with the guys we got here, we can go toe to toe with anybody, and who knows what will happen in a 7-game series. Without these guys there, I know they're on a 3-game winning streak right now. I don't think that's going to hold up. I think they're going to fall down the standings because of it. And I think they might be falling back a little too far to really get to a point where they feel like they could, do something along with the noise around Donovan Mitchell. I just think it makes sense at this point. It doesn't even have to happen like right now, but just like this season, I think it probably makes some sense to try to just recoup some assets from Mitchell and retool the next version of the Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, right? Like this team makes sense. I really would like to see them fully healthy for a whole season and see what like they're capable of doing. They're a very fun team to watch, I think. I don't think you look to move Garland, right? It's just really, do you move Donovan Mitchell? Do you maybe then move Jared Allen and go from there? I think when it comes to all of them. But if you're not going to break through, you may as well go retool around these guys. As you said, it's not a rebuild, it's more of a retool. So definitely go listen to Locked On Cavaliers. They're going to be covering this one because that's a team that could kind of really shake up the NBA's trade deadline. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On NBA. I'm your usual Wednesday co-host here on Thursday, Jake Madison at Nola Jake on Twitter. He is Ku Khahil at Ku Khahil on Twitter, host of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Dude, I appreciate you being on here, man.
Appreciate you, man. I had fun doing it.
Of course. Thanks for listening to Locked On NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.